Long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Beckham will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow. It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 1085 Gridiron Podcast. I am your host, Anthony Joki. As always, I got Jack McCurry with me, but today we have another special guest. He covers the Browns and the NFL for both for The Athletic. He also is one of the hosts of the A to Z podcast. He is Mr. Zach Jackson. How you doing today, Zach?
I'm good, guys. Glad to be here.
Well, we want to get you in here because obviously, there is a draft this week, and we want to get you in here and get your thoughts regarding that. But first, Josina Anderson was on 92.3 The Fan today to talk about Trent Williams. It just seems to be the rumor that just isn't going away. In your estimation, how much truth do you think there is behind this rumor of the Browns maybe trying to acquire Trent Williams before draft night, on draft night, or maybe shortly after?
Well, especially in the Twitter era, truth and rumor are not exactly associated. I think there's a scenario where the Browns make a pick or make a move and make a pick and then need to go after Trent Williams or Jason Peters or another option at left tackle. And that would be getting a guy that you're not sure is ready to play. And really with any of these guys, considering you're not going to have much of an off season, considering, none of them exhausted their college eligibility except Josh Jones, considering that Wills isn't even 21 years old yet. Right now it's talk. It's been talk for months. It's been talk for two Browns regimes. I don't know what's going on with Trent Williams and the Redskins. It's a terrible organization. It's been terribly messy, right? But for me, the Browns, it could not be my plan A. It couldn't be my plan B. He hasn't played. He's 32. He had the health issue. He's only under contract for 1 year. Now, if that's like next year's fifth-round pick, then I'm interested in Trent Williams, right? But if it's giving up anything of value and thinking that this guy is ready to play and ready to be the answer and going to be part of your plans because you're going to have to fit his salary in now and into the future, there's great risk involved with that.
And when you talk about truth and rumors, Zach, obviously, the last week there's been a lot of discussion about Odell Beckham Jr., his future here with the Browns. There was that report out of New York that there was allegedly trade talks with the Vikings. D. Podesta squashed it. Adam Schefter has squashed it multiple times. What is the media's fascination with getting Odell Beckham out of Cleveland?
Well, Odell is a name. He's a celebrity on and off the field. Right. Just from the outside, does anybody think that Odell Beckham really loves it here in Cleveland? He moved here worst year, but that being said, right now, as we record this 2 days before the draft, Odell Beckham has little trade value. I can't say he has no trade value because he's an exceptionally talented player, but he has not nearly enough trade value for the Browns to make a move. He makes a lot of money. He's coming off of surgery. And this is the supposed greatest receiver draft class of all time. What team is going to give up anything for Odell Beckham? The unknown, the salary. So he might have value again in 10 days, 3 months, 6 months. And he might not be long here. I hate to bring up things I roll my eyes at, but when the Browns signed Austin Hooper, I was like, I wonder if Beckham's long to the team. And people were like, well, what does that have to do with anything? Well, Hooper makes 11. Landry makes 14. Beckham makes 14. How long are the Browns going to pay that? None of us know. And I think to an extent the Browns don't know. Name Odell Beckham and his roots, a guy that lives in Hollywood and played in New York and got famous in New York, right? His name's always going to be out there. But I would, of all the scenarios we could go over for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, I would be stunned if the Browns traded him because I just cannot imagine a team giving up anything of value with all the uncertainty around him. I know it's supposed to be a minor surgery and he's supposed to be ready.
When you talk about trade value, is there anything that a team could offer this weekend that you would say run to the league office, send it in, and just kind of move on from there?
Like if the Dolphins want to come back up, right? Say they get ballsy and they don't trust the medicals on Tua, but they still want them. If they were to give like 2 first-rounders for 10, you do it, right? If some team like Atlanta wanted to come from 16 and offered you like a first and a second, you do it. For a player, for something like that, I don't know. I think, the Browns might revisit their Anthony Harris talks, but that's going to be expensive because, again, you'd have to give up an asset and pay him a lot of money. I certainly would be interested if I was the Browns in Yannick Ngakoue, but, that's a lot of money down the road, and what's Jacksonville going to want? You wouldn't give up a first-rounder for him, but it's certainly not like you're dealing with Bill O'Brien when they got Seattle got Clowney for a 3 and 2 backup linebackers. So, you're going to pay like a 2 and a 3, something like that. So, as far as run and do that, I don't know. I know it gives a lot of fans like bad chills, but I'm all for trading down. I think teams want these receivers and there's all sorts of buzz and all sorts of lies. But if, Justin Jefferson, for example, is going to go and say the first 16 picks and teams want a position to get up and do that, then that can only benefit the Browns because guys they want or would like are still going to be there. And they could add extra assets. So I do expect them to be busy on the trade front. I think a huge knockout wow trade is probably not likely, but I expect them to be moving around the board, even if it's not Thursday night, to be moving around the board, to be adding picks and then looking. I think, they haven't played a game yet, but in this aggressive offseason, they have left themselves important financial flexibility and flexibility with the roster that if they can go get that guy, some of the names we've already talked about, somebody else becomes available because of a surprise draft pick. They have the money to do it, and I think, with next year's picks and having the extra 3 this year, I think they have the flexibility and the chance to go get a guy.
In terms of free agency, they've been tied to Everson Griffin and Jadeveon Clowney. Do you see after the draft that they might call back and try to kick the tires on bringing one of those guys in, even on a 1-year deal at this point?
Yeah. I would say, Jack, right now, probably Clowney more than Griffin because I think Griffin is probably a third down rusher, and I think you just signed that guy in Claiborne. However, with Clowney, if he's still out there, I don't know. I think it was a case of Clowney was still out there longer than anyone thought, and the Browns not only called and said, hey, what do you think? But I also think they let that out there as a way of letting other teams know that we're open for business still. We're kind of going for this. So if you got a guy, and in this case I'm specifically referencing Jacksonville, but I'm kind of referencing other teams as they go through the moves. I think they're letting them know that, they can make them. They would like to upgrade their pass rush, and they basically have that free $15 million in Olivier Vernon. If Olivier Vernon's healthy and making plays, he can help you. But if you can go get an upgrade from him and cut him with no salary cap penalty, then you do that. And I think, as we sit here, all options are on the table. And I would hesitate to call Clowney likely, but I would still say he's one of the options that's on the table.
So we're heading into this draft, and I would think it's going to be the most unique draft in NFL history, obviously, with everybody doing it from their homes. You're already having technical difficulties on a mock draft and GMs yelling at their kids to get off the internet. Even for you guys, Zach, and the local media, you guys are going to be covering it from home instead of being in Berea like you usually are on draft weekend. How would you rank this draft among all the drafts you've covered, whether you were with the Browns or working in the local media?
Well, it's certainly the strangest, but to me, Jack, it starts way before, and just not having the individual visits. I think some teams have got some guys in, but they did not having pro days. I think maybe like a seventh of the schools were able to have their pro days. And the thing is in the Twitter era, pro days have gotten blown up into more that they are. And I think some cases workouts have too, but teams fish for that info. Because sometimes especially you get in the second, third round of the draft, and you got a trade offer, or you're 5 picks away and you only really like 2 players left, you kind of want to know who the other teams are taking. And do you need to move up? Can you move down and still get that guy? Who might be calling you? Who might be willing to overpay, right? If you have 2 suitors for your number 41 pick, for example. So that part of it's strange. As for the actual operation, I trust that the NFL spared no expense in getting things as secure as possible. But between weather and human error and people knowing this is a huge worldwide event and maybe wanting to hack in or cause some problems, maybe it's just as small as a GM sharing a screen somewhere or not being on mute when he thinks he is on mute. There will be some glitch, but I think the draft is going to go on, and I think it'll be something that's funny or minor. But I think there's a little bit of angst league-wide, just because you don't know. I mean, to frame it this way, and I'm going to write about this. I've called around the people that work in team video departments or used to work in team IT departments, and so tell me what this is like. And they said, a lot of it is no different, but they said every team will have an oh shit button, just in case, something goes wrong, because they're prepared for that. So it was this guy's belief that nobody will need to use the oh shit button, but every team will have one.
Ultimately, when it comes to the Browns getting on the clock at number 10, do you feel that they will actually make that pick, or do you feel that they will trade down? I'm kind of the mindset and heading into this that if whoever their top guy is or top 2 guys aren't there at 10, I'm totally open to kind of like the Eric Mangini draft where he traded down twice, ended up settling on Alex Mack, and was able to gather a whole bunch of other picks for future drafts. And with the talk of maybe there's going to be a supplemental draft where all these college kids are going to declare, those picks can become really valuable. So when it comes time for the Browns to pick at number 10, do you think that they're actually going to make that pick?
Well, the real answer is how the hell would I know? But you didn't have me on to give you that answer, right? So I'm going to give you this. I think if Andrew Thomas or Isaiah Simmons are available, that the Browns will make their pick. I think if either of those guys are not available, or if the run on receivers has started and teams are trying to position themselves, maybe if there's a quarterback still on the board, which I think is not super likely, but it's certainly possible. And by quarterback, I mean Tua or Herbert. I think they could trade down. We did the Athletic beat writer mock this morning, and I traded down twice, just like you said, right down to number 21. So we'll see. And in that scenario, neither Andrew Thomas nor Isaiah Simmons was available, so I was comfortable, making that move. That's my personal preference. I mean, we have to keep in mind, guys, that they might have liked Austin Jackson or Patrick Murray or someone else all along, Grant Delpit, right? I don't know. This is the draft of the unknown. This is a brand new group. And, they don't necessarily have to take a left tackle at 10. It makes the most sense. To me, it's the safest and best long-term bet. We think this group is going to think in terms of maximizing assets and looking to the future and having everything in line. So I think paying a rookie tackle and letting him grow is a much better economic decision now going forward than chasing after Trent Williams. But maybe Andrew Berry and Paul DePodesta don't think that. And I think, you have to respect that their options are open. And then if you're a Browns fan, you hope that it's their options being open, not that they get forced into a situation where they're like, well, what do we do? We didn't, all 3 tackles we liked and Isaiah Simmons are gone. What do we do now? So I think all of those are in play.
So, Zach, you really do think that the Browns really like Isaiah Simmons and would be comfortable taking him at 10?
I do. Need help in the middle of that defense. need help at all layers of that defense, and he's a guy that could potentially be that. So, I think the team that picks him has to have the right plan for him because he is a different guy. But I think as you look at the kind of athletic team that they want to put on the field, the kind of defense they're eventually going to need to play, keep up with some of these quarterbacks and team offenses that they play. I mean, a 238-pound guy who runs 4.39 can cover and still had 10-something sacks last year, even though a lot of times he was covering tight ends and even receivers. I mean, they don't make those cats. So I think he is in play. I would say there's a chance he's still aboard at 10, but he probably doesn't make it past 8.
When you look at the other positions that the Browns need, and particularly on the defense, how would you rank them? Because what they did in free agency, they kind of filled these holes with one-year contracts to the point where it's okay if they don't fill that position in the draft, but they're not going to be hurt on the football field whenever we do play some games this fall by not drafting a guy at the position where they sign a guy with a one-year contract.
Can we agree that they patched these holes, didn't necessarily fix them?
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a short-term patch.
Yeah. Right. So, no, that's what I've talked about with flexibility. And this is one thing teams do. What if we had to play a game tomorrow? Well, they would start Andrew Sendejo. I don't really think he's their starting free safety right now, right? So what would they do? Well, they'd start Mack Wilson and B.J. Goodson. Yeah, I mean, Mack Wilson played almost every snap last year. He should be ready for more. I like his talent. Is he really ready? I don't know. What is B.J. Goodson at this point? I don't think he's near the player. The two guys he replaced, is he close to that? We'll find out. So it's linebacker and it's safety. And then, you're always looking for pass rush. And teams can never have enough corners either. And, I think Denzel Ward, one of these days, has a chance to be an elite level corner. He's got to stay healthy. I don't know what's going to become of Grady Williams. And I don't know how this group evaluates him. So, really all over the defense. If they're playing them tomorrow, I have real concerns about safety and linebacker, but they're not. So, and I think, DePodesta and Barry, we've heard this alignment, this shared vision. They've kind of said, we want good players who aren't necessarily have to play on game one. And that's why they went with that one-year strategy on defense. So, getting a guy like Kevin Johnson, for example, good player. Just didn't stay healthy early in his career, and that's why he's considered a first-round bust. He probably wasn't a first-rounder to start with. But if he's your slot corner and he plays 16 games, I think you're good there. And he's makes the rest of your defense better. Andrew Billings, one-year deal, hungry, really athletic, makes your defense better. I think they are in position to kind of think longer term with the draft picks and not say, okay, we need a free safety, or we need this pass rusher is not a 4-3 base end, so we can't take him. No, you take him and you figure out by year 2 how you can best utilize him.
Yeah, I mean, in regards to that, did it shock you yesterday during Andrew Berry's press conference that he said that they don't feel pigeonholed and they're treating this pretty much like a expansion draft and that they're going to take the best players available?
Did it shock me? No, but I thought that he scripted that line and he was going to make sure he said that regardless. I mean, he just doesn't answer most of the questions, and I get it. I go back to the combine when I asked him. I tried to get him to talk about what he did in Philly. Was he on the road scouting these guys? I just wanted some insight. And then at one point I asked him, hey, with pro days, will you be there? And he said, Zach, I would never tell you, what pro days I was going to go to for strategic reasons. And so I sit there that is the most minuscule minor detail, but that's what they're into. So of course he's not going to come out and say, guys, we think Tristan Wirfs is a left tackle or a right guard or whatever. And he's certainly not going to say, we think so-and-so stinks. So we have to replace him. He's going to keep all his options open. So I think, Jack, I don't think that he meant that in a way of we have a completely blank slate, because they've certainly operated like they don't. But I do think, especially, into that second and third round, there's a thought of let's just get good players and try to reap the benefits down the road.
So, Zach, the news is actually coming across right now. Rob Gronkowski has told New England that he wants to come back and he only wants to play for one team, and it's not New England, it's the Tampa Bay Bucks with Tom Brady. Are you shocked that Gronk wants to come back, and do you think that's going to happen?
No, well, I mean, I'm not shocked. He was young. His body probably needed a year off. You never say never to anything with Gronk, right? So I'm not shocked there. I don't know, obviously, what will happen with that. I knew the two teams coming into this weekend that have, like, absolutely no one at tight end are the Patriots and the Packers. So those are two destinations I would look at for David Njoku if they were to make a move there. But as far as Gronk, I'm guessing that his contract was frozen and he was put on the reserve retired list, but not covering the Patriots, I don't know that, and I have no idea. Again, guys, like, I know Gronk was in Florida for the wrestling thing. I don't know where I'm assuming he doesn't go home to Buffalo. I'm assuming he lives somewhere. But you can't get physicals on these guys. So trading guys this week is going to be difficult. And, does Gronk really want to play? Or did Gronk have a few pops and give an interview and say that he's going to come back and play for the Tampa Bay Bucks? I don't know. And do the Bucks want that? So we'll see. That is certainly interesting and it's certainly noteworthy. But I don't think that him saying that necessarily means that there will be movement over the next few days.
Zach, before we get you on out of here, we wanted to kind of pick your brain because you did write a book, and we wanted to kind of dive into your memory because it is draft time. Do you have one favorite draft memory from your time covering the Browns above all other ones?
Yeah, so the first year, 2006, that I was allowed to sit in the draft room is when they did the trade for Cameron Wembley, and they let the Ravens take Haloti Ngata, right? And so, the execution was flawless. The result turned out to not be good, but they genuinely had consensus on that they wanted the edge rusher more than the big boy, right? So they had this whole thing plotted out where they were going to get Ngata on TV, on the phone, so the Ravens would see it. They were going to have Ozzie then on the phone. They were going to talk him. They let Ozzie win the negotiation. They asked for a 4. They got a 6. They used it on Babatunde Oshinowo, who never really played. But that was my introduction to when you're watching the draft, like, there's no secret portal out there. Like, the teams and the war rooms are watching the draft on TV just like you are. So, this is far from the first draft where the picks are submitted by computer. That's been going on for several years. But, in real time, that was my whole introduction. And I'm like, 0.00002 of football people ever get into a war room, right? And like ESPN, it has made that such a sacred place. So I'll always remember that one. And then 2 years later, the draft where they had traded away all their first day picks, they only had the second day picks, and it started with Bo Bell. I don't even recall if I was in the room on the first day. I don't think I was. But on the second day, I was in there about 45 minutes before it started. And Phil Savage called everybody together and said, okay, let's just do this right now. Who are we going to take in the 7th round? And they put 5 names on that board an hour before the 4th round started. One guy went in the 4th round. That was William Hayes, who had a nice career as a backup pass rusher for the Titans. But the other 4 guys were all there in the 7th, and they had already talked it out that they liked Alex Hall the most because even though he was skinny, he was athletic and he played a premium position. And I was just so fascinated that they could look and say, don't even consider trading up for these corners because we've judged this guy a 6th round pick for 6 months and we're not going to change now and trade a 4th rounder for him just because we need a corner. And then just to be able to go through that work and say, here's who we're picking from, and to see it, all those picks, hundreds of picks later, and all those hours, it was like, damn, this is pretty impressive. So I'll always remember those two. And there's certainly been a lot of forgettable Browns moments. And in my live chat today, someone asked, the one that's out there is the Browns draft Jordan Cameron, and the PR department calls Cameron Jordan and says, welcome to the Browns. And he's like, I got drafted by the Saints 2 nights ago. But yeah, as far as me being there, that's what stands out about how I was just like, hey, this is happening in real time and it's going on TV like everything else. So that was really cool.
Well, it's certainly going to be a fascinating time to watch the draft on Thursday night. I know it's kind of nice to have a sense of normalcy with everything that's going on with this pandemic and kind of watch really the first sporting event in over a month. So I think Thursday and throughout the entire weekend is going to be a fun process to watch, especially if there's any kind of hiccups. I know we're all going to be all over that. And Zach, if you want to let everybody know where they could read you, where they could find your book, because if they're bored during quarantine, that would be a great option to pick that up and read as well.
Yeah, it's my pinned tweet at Akron Jackson. So you can read me on The Athletic. I'm at Akron Jackson on Twitter, and unfortunately I'm on there every day of the year. So find me right there.
Well, Zach, we certainly appreciate you coming on the podcast for the first time. At some point, maybe we'll get you back on here, maybe after the draft. And we truly appreciate you coming on, donating your time, and giving us some very good content. And make sure to follow Zach on Twitter at Akron Jackson. Be sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at The Dogland. Follow me and Jack on there as well. And with all that, we're going to get on out of here. Thank you again, Zach. And most importantly, go Browns.